There's been a lot of talk about Gen X, and a lot of it's funny because we are the last generation to have a real sense of humor, I think. But one of the things that my generation understood that has been forgotten is why we fight. Fighting is important. And fighting has a purpose. There are reasons to fight. There are reasons not to fight. And for the most part, we knew the difference. Our great-grandparents were World War I vets. Our grandparents were World War II vets. Our parents were Vietnam vets. And we were around for the Gulf War, the first one and the second one. But we also understood that every man has to fight his own war. Fighting your war is important. Every man has to fight his war. Whether it's a physical war, whether he goes to war, whether he comes home. Every challenge has to be met. It's not about so much about winning the war. It's about meeting the challenge. And meeting the challenge is one of those things that's vitally important, to meet something head on and stare it down. Had a couple of bullies in school. One of them, he was a slow learner. He kept picking on me, knocked him down and sat on his head. Slow learner. Thought he'd get away with it. About 6 months later, I knocked him down again and sat on his head. I'm not a fighter. He was just a fat little kid who wanted to be a bully. It was about meeting the challenge head on. This has less to do about technology and more to do about attitudes. We were just as social as people are now. We just did it face to face. But you had to fight. You had to fight your war. You had to meet your challenge. And that was just part of the growing, You had to, when it came to women, you fought for the woman you wanted. Sometimes you won, a lot of times you lost. But you had to be willing to stand there. Statistics show she puts herself out there. The man chooses the relationship status. That's just how it works. If you two like each other and somebody else likes her, you fought for her. It wasn't noble, it was just human nature. Just what people do. You fight for each other. Men and women. Part of being in a relationship was fighting for each other because your combined success was in both of your mutual interests. Realistically. Modern people don't think that way anymore. I don't get it. Growing up, failure was not an option, even though we knew failure was around every corner. But we also knew if we failed, we'd just get up and try it again. It was vital that you got up and tried it again. It was vital that you stood up. It was important. And the closest thing I saw to this was in 9/11 when we quit fighting amongst ourselves and fought the world. I like that because it really showed the true spirit of who America really is. We are a wild, unpredictable group of people, and I love it. I love everything about it. That's what the world doesn't understand about us. But Gen X, I think, was the last generation to really personify that. It was You know, you see all these TikTokers and influencers hanging a lot of crap on us, but, you know, it was important to keep, if somebody needed to be busted down a peg, it was important that they got busted down a peg. Peer pressure is an important thing in society. It's vitally important. It's actually very useful. There's a positive side to it. Because if somebody's screwing up and everybody else is letting him know he's screwing up, and you put that peer pressure on him, he's going to correct his actions. You don't have a talk with him. You just let him know that you disapprove. That's what these young kids don't realize about our parents. They didn't have to tell us stuff because we knew the rules up front. This is an acceptable form of behavior. We don't care what you do up to this point, but you cross this line and there are consequences. And the line was non-negotiable. Make no mistake, the line was 100% non-negotiable. And that is the difference. That's why, be home when the street lights were on. That was a command. That was a threat. And if you were home later, you better have an excuse, or you better go find a telephone, drop a quarter in it, and make a phone call. Hey, this happened. Most of our parents were pretty easygoing as long as there was an explanation, as long as you checked in. That's what they don't talk about. They trusted us, but they also trusted us to that line. This is the limit. That's what these young kids don't realize. So, but I'll tell you what, when it was time to fight, sometimes our parents would just let us fight because it was more important for us to fight than it was to be pacifist. Sometimes you needed to get your butt beat. Sometimes you need a good beat down because it corrects bad behavior. Sometimes you needed to beat somebody up because it built confidence. There was no bullying involved. Sometimes pounding a bully down was exactly the right thing to do. I always talk about the one thing we've forgotten that they talk about on social media is everybody's forgotten that getting hit in the mouth is still a very real thing. A very real thing. So, I think we need to get back to that. Understand that there is a bar that we all have to reach, and that sometimes fighting is a good thing.